Going to take action on Russian hacking of our election. Here to discuss, Basil Smikle, the executive director of the New York State Democratic Party, senior political commentators Andy Dean and Matt Lewis. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you. Mr. Smikle, you first. President Barack Obama did an interview with NPR. It will air tomorrow morning. He talks about the Russian hacking and how it affected the election. Here's part of what he says. He says, there's no doubt that it contributed to an atmosphere in which the only focus for weeks at a time, months at a time, were Hillary's emails. I have no doubt that it had some impact just based on the coverage. The irony of all this, of course, is that for most of my presidency, there's been a pretty sizable wing of the Republican Party that has consistently criticized me for not being tough enough on Russia. A big chunk of the Republican Party, which prided itself during the Reagan era and for decades that followed as being the bulwark against Russian influence, now suddenly is embracing him. What do you think? Does he have a point?
I mean, he has a point in the sense that, yes, the Russian hacking did contribute to the narrative, the negative narrative of Hillary Clinton in terms of, people not feeling that she was trustworthy and so on. Of course, as a Democrat and someone who had worked for her for 20-some-odd years, I didn't believe that. But there was this narrative out there. And the fact is that those hacks did impact that narrative in a way that I think impacted the ultimate election results. That's problematic. And there are a lot of people that have said, well, President Obama himself sort of dismissed the Russian incursion into the United States, whether it's through the cyber attacks or otherwise. In 2012, when he was debating Mitt Romney, that may have been true. But today we see that they have been directly involved, and we need to take action.
Matt, does the president have a point that now all of a sudden, Republicans are embracing Russia?
Yeah, he does, absolutely. I saw this starting about 3 or 4 years ago. I was at a conservative dinner, and somebody started talking about how great Vladimir Putin is. He's pro-life, and he's being hard on the gays. And it's a weird thing. Pat Buchanan, about 6 months later, wrote a piece asking, is Putin one of us? Meaning, is Putin a conservative? I think Peter Beinart really nailed it at The Atlantic when he said, the paradigm used to be America, the force of freedom versus the forces of tyranny. Today, there's a different paradigm, and it's Western civilization versus ISIS and radical Islam. And if you buy that latter paradigm, that's the defining issue of our time, then allying yourself with Vladimir Putin is about the same as joining forces with Joseph Stalin to defeat Nazism.
Andy Dean, you seem perplexed by that. Why?
Don, I'm perplexed by about everything I just heard, but I do buy into this idea that radical Islam is our biggest foe. If we look at the terror attacks over the past 15 years, reality makes us have to believe that. And also, Don, I'm just confused by this whole, maybe I'm not getting this Russian hacker thing that the media is obsessed with 24/7. If you ask WikiLeaks and Julian Assange where they got their info from, which he was on a radio program, he was on Hannity's program today, Julian Assange said he got the WikiLeaks, the John Podesta emails, from a non-state actor that was not Russia. So this idea that Putin handed over Podesta's emails.
We're talking about government and intelligence reports. We're not talking just about WikiLeaks and Julian Assange here, Andy.
Intelligence reports, Don, but let's get specific. That say what? That Russia got Podesta's emails? That's factually untrue. No, and this idea that the American people are dumb enough to fall for fake news on Facebook is ridiculous.
Well, listen,
that's not all of the report. You're picking and choosing parts of the report that you want to criticize, but that's not the entire
Correct.
Part. Yeah.
I cherry-picked, Don.
Yeah, you did cherry-pick. Go on, Mr.
No, the CIA has said that Russia was involved in these hacks, and the fact is,
what hack?
The fact is that they
and the FBI as well, which was Hillary Clinton and the Democrats were not a fan of during the election.
And they released only Democratic emails. Even if they had Republican emails, those were not released, but they released only Democratic emails. So there was clearly a motive here. Is the motive to make Donald Trump president? I think the jury's still out on that. But the truth of the matter is there was a clear motive to impact how the Democrats would run their campaign and the narrative about the Democrats.
Maybe was it just to shake up the system as well, instead of having the status quo, which they would consider to be a Hillary Clinton, or maybe Vladimir Putin has some vendetta against Hillary Clinton.
It's clear that Vladimir Putin did not like Hillary Clinton, and that, the email...
Well, that's true.
Go ahead, Matt.
Well, no, I'm just going to say that, I was just hard on the Republicans for their sort of changing and their tune on Russia. I'm from the Reagan era, when it was an evil empire. But the Soviet Union is gone, but we have a KGB agent running
it.
But I would say let's turn to Barack Obama.
Matt, go ahead.
I just want to also be hard on Barack Obama, for he is a guy who allowed this to happen on his watch. We're seeing what's happening in Aleppo, but this is another example. Barack Obama, why did he allow this to happen? And now that he is basically threatening, we're going to eventually, someday, we're going to get revenge on Russia for doing this. What's that, like a red line being drawn? I mean, I would like to see, I think he has invited some of this by his weakness.
Oh, no, but then if you're a Reagan guy, do you think Reagan would actually stand up and let Russia and stand by while Russia actually has this kind of leverage in our political system? I would imagine that Reagan would turn around and say, no, we're not going to stand up to this.
That's my point.
Reagan was fighting
This
communism.
wouldn't have happened to Reagan.
We need to pass out history books to CNN analysts. It was a different time. We were fighting the evil empire to tear down that wall. I mean, I'm just very confused.
You think the Russians are now great, trustworthy, they don't have geopolitical aspirations that are at odds with us?
I will tell you this.
Wait, hold on. Andy, I want you to hold on, stand by. And explain what you mean, because I think many people may have a hard time following your logic. And I don't mean that as no shade, but explain.
That's okay. I think the common citizen watching at home, I think, is agreeing with me and confused by the three of you. When I say take out the history books, this is a different time. This is not the 1980s. When it comes to geopolitics, we have a lot more in common with Russia than we don't. Look at Syria.
You have a lot in common with Barack Obama. You sound like Barack Obama, who said the 1980s called they want their foreign policy back.
Well, I guess I don't know where you're referring to. When it comes to ISIS and radical jihad, Vladimir Putin knows how to deal with radical jihadists.
Do you watch any of the presidential debates?
He's talking the debate between Mitt Romney in 2012
and Mitt Romney lost.
Barack
Mitt Romney
Obama.
was a choker. Yeah, Romney was a loser and a choker, and that's why Trump won, and Romney didn't. Romney was wrong, Trump is right, and the American people showed that.
You're on the side of a KGB agent, but that's cool. If that's where your conservative movement is taking you, that's fine.
It's the FSB. Once again, take out a history book. It is not the KGB. It is the FSB. It is different. Time has progressed.
But history aside, where we are right now, where we are right now is with the understanding that Russia has had a substantial impact on our electoral process. And the question is now, what do we do going forward? Barack Obama has called for an investigation of sorts, and I hope that the results of that, as we've seen over the last few days, more of that